A good final boss can do wonders for a game. Not only can it sweeten the entire experience, but it also makes it way more memorable and just something to reminisce about. It's one of the most memorable experiences in the game, and it usually caps off the story in a lot of ways, whether it's thematically, mechanically, or just story-wise. It's a super important moment in every game, and it's very important to get it right. A good final boss can absolutely elevate the game and make it a better experience, while a bad final boss can very much sour the game and make you dislike it and maybe not even wanting to replay it. It's a very important thing to get right. In my opinion, a challenging final boss that tests everything you need is super awesome, memorable, and I love it. I think it's a great thing when bosses do that. I don't think it's like super necessary. It's just an extra point. In this video, I will be counting down my favorite final bosses of all time and explaining why I love them so much. I will be excluding DLC final bosses because it would make things very complicated, to say the least. And before I get into it, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. It would help out my channel massively and I would really appreciate it. It helps me out a ton. And with everything said, let's get into the list. Before I get to the proper list, let's go down over some honorable mentions, because there are obviously a lot of final bosses I have fought at this point and a lot of them are fantastic. First, I want to mention Soul of Cinder from Dark Souls 3. It's an awesome ending to the entire Dark Souls fire linking storyline, has a great OST, a wonderful presentation, and one of the best movesets in the entirety of Dark Souls 3, a boss known for its great boss roster. It's a fantastic boss and super memorable and awesome. Then I want to mention Air from Armored Core 6. Air is one of the best bosses I have ever fought, especially as a final boss, and I would really love to include her in the final boss list, but there is a very specific reason why she isn't, so she's definitely going to be mentioned here. Insanely good ending boss, the story is fantastic, incredible dialogue, it has this amazing cinematic moment in the middle of the fight. The moveset is also just fantastic with some of the coolest moves I've ever seen in a game. It's one of the coolest bosses I have ever fought and it's just awesome. I wish I could place it in the top 5. And then of course I want to mention Cuphead. The Devil is a fantastic final boss, capping off the story, which is of course not really deep for Cuphead, but it's still very nice. And the animations, as in like every Cuphead boss, are just wonderful with intensifying phases. It's great. I could be talking about a lot more bosses, like one of Team Ninja's final bosses, which are often hitters. However, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Just know there are a lot of final bosses I love, and if you have some different ones, please be sure to comment them down below. So you maybe remember how I mentioned I won't be including any DLC final bosses, and technically I lied, because the Beast and the Dogma encounter from The Binding of Isaac Repentance are the final boss of said DLC, which of course is not the base game. But I think for Isaac specifically, the DLCs are more like expansions and extensions of the main game, like they feel integral. Playing the base game of Isaac wouldn't feel right, I would never play it. The DLC is the definite way to play. It's not like additional extra content that expands the universe, it is straight up the base game extended. So that's why I decided to include this boss. It's a pretty interesting exception. So why is this boss amazing? I think mechanically this is the best boss in Isaac. It tests everything the game teaches you and forces you to apply it to perfection. It has insanely difficult bullet hells, some very cool positioning shenanigans, managing enemies, in general just being aware and reading the animations. It's wonderful. Talking about animations, it's animated wonderfully. Such a cool fight. But probably my favorite part about this fight is the presentation and the themes. This is the final boss of the game. The lore of this game is very sad and fucked up, so maybe trigger warning, there is a lot of abuse in the story, and the build up towards this boss fight was just immaculate and fantastic. It's very sad, the ending of the entire game, Isaac dying and suffocating in a chest, the Christian broadcasts influencing Isaac's mom being represented as the Dogma boss, and the Beast having mom's clothes. It's very grim, it's dark. Also, the soundtrack name of the boss, Revelation 13:1, is a verse from the Bible, which is insanely cool. Love references like that. It's just a fantastic boss. Living in the Light, the soundtrack from the Dogma fight, which, yeah, basically it's phase 1 to the fight, because these fights come right after each other. It's a bit similar to Radagon and Elden Beast from Elden Ring. Anyway, Living in the Light is by far my favorite soundtrack in the game. It's fantastic and just super memorable. All in all, this fight is just amazing and I love it. I think I've talked about this boss a good few times on this channel already, but especially as a final boss, I really want to reiterate how great I think this fight is. It's an amazing conclusion to the journey. Now that you can summon Torrent, it's even more epic. You fight Radagon and the Elden Beast. However, this is not really Radagon anymore, he's just puppeteered by the Greater Will, or rather extension the Elden Beast. It's the perfect final boss for this ending. The presentation is probably my second favorite in the game, besides the Promised Consort from the DLC, and it's just incredible. The design of both the phases is fantastic. Elden Beast Arena might be the coolest. It's so good and it's just such a cool end to the journey. Mechanically, it's also fucking fantastic, especially the Radagon phase. It goes so hard, super dangerous, quick and slow attacks, delays, some insanely cinematic moves, and Elden Beast also does have that. Sure, there is the one bad attack, Elden Stars, but besides that, it's a really awesome fight, and this fight really went up a lot for me. It used to be an A tier, but now it's probably high S tier. I love it so much. And the soundtrack is one of the best in the series. It's so good. The main menu theme being remixed into a battle theme to accompany this fantastic encounter. It's super memorable and I will never forget it. Seeing these cutscenes for the first time definitely gave me chills. It was incredible. What is there left to say? It's just an awesome conclusion to the wonderful and long journey through the lands between, and I think I will always remember this fight fondly. It's just that good. Alright, before I get into this, Stellar Blade is a 2024 release and it's kinda recent, so I'm going to give a spoiler warning. I'm going to be spoiling the ending twist of the game and it's a really cool one, so if you want to play this game, maybe skip ahead for this part of the video. However, if not, you have been warned. So anyway, Elder Knight Tiba is one of my favorite final bosses of all time, and I was shocked. The best thing about this fight for me is just the presentation. Yeah, you maybe realize I am someone who values this aspect a lot, and it's probably my second favorite of all time here in this fight. It's just so cool. One of the coolest areas I've ever seen in a video game. The boss design is absolutely immaculate, even biblical, and the soundtrack is one of my favorites of all time as well. It's fantastic. Funnily enough, I don't think, besides presentation, Elder Knight Tiba is the best at anything in his own game. I think Demo Crawler has a better soundtrack and pretty similar level of presentation, though honestly not up there. And I think Raven and Raven in a fairy costume are mechanically the better bosses, maybe even the Providence fight. So why is this boss so high? Because I think thematically and build-up wise, it is fantastic. This boss is your companion, Adam, who was with you for the entire game, and the twist is just amazing. The Adam storyline has been building up subtly in the background the whole time, and the twist was just really cool and I really enjoyed it. Stellar Blade's story is not one of the best things I've ever seen, but it's certainly not bad, and I think the Adam twist alone makes it very memorable for me. Now, is the moveset bad by any means? No, it's very fun, one of my favorites, and luckily this boss was also one of the harder fights in Stellar Blade. They actually challenged me and forced me to adapt. There is this shooting section which is only present in 3 bosses if I'm not wrong, and thereby very memorable for me, and the moves are really great. A wonderful blend of deflecting, yellow circle attacks which you need to dodge, blue circle attacks which you need to dodge back, and purple circle attacks you need to dodge forward. It's a wonderful rhythm and a great fight, and this entire combination throwing into a crucible creates this wonderful final boss, which was just a joy to experience, and I genuinely think this was the cherry on the top for this wonderful game. Ever since I faced Sword Saint Ishin for the first time, I just knew it was one of the best bosses of all time. He is so incredibly well designed in every way. He is probably one of the most badass FromSoft characters in history. He's just super awesome, his voice actor is fantastic, and he's probably my favorite character in Sekiro overall, which is filled with very interesting characters. Besides that, the arena you fight him in, where you start the game and you end it there, it's really poetic and I really enjoy this arena. It's a field of flowers, you can never go wrong with that. Sadly, his OST is a bit on the lackluster side, but I still think it fits the fight and that's all what matters at the end. My favorite thing about this fight, however, and I think most will agree, is the mechanical side of it. This fight is probably my second favorite in Sekiro, only being topped by Inner Father. other. And talking about inners, I will be talking about Inner Ishin because he's just an upgraded version of him and I mostly fight him nowadays. However, it also applies to the regular versions because both are just fantastic bosses. I think that mechanically this boss is absolute perfection. He tests everything you learned in the game. Deflection, Mikiri counters, jumping over attacks, even lightning deflect. It's everything there. Phase 2 and 3 straight up have some of the best deflection combos, period. It's just incredible. This fight will never get boring. After not fighting Ishin for a few months, I jumped back in the Sekiro and defeated him on like my second try. This boss is really difficult. However, after you learn the combat and best all of its challenges, learn how to efficiently get in damage and posture damage, you can easily defeat this boss and you will not unlearn Sekiro. You can even make this boss harder for you by deflecting the Mikiri counters, them being extended into longer combos, or dodging the lightning. There is just so much expression you can do in this fight. It's really amazing, and I think there are some of the coolest shots and cinematic moments in this fight in the entire game, especially phase 3 with the lightning. It's just an amazing fight. Ishin was my favorite final boss for quite a few years, but then something changed. Allmind is not only my favorite final boss of all time, but also one of the best bosses ever made and one of my personal favorites. In every way, it's a perfect final boss and armored core boss. The story and thematic implications of this boss are once again fantastic. We have the supercomputer AI that wants to evolve humanity and fuse it with Coral, and then we have Iguazu, the sore loser of the game who is pissed at every opportunity he gets.
Lucky, Merc. You were the only warm body they could find. The red guns are going to be first over the wall. Have fun watching from the sidelines.
This guy is a pathetic little worm, but the amazing thing is, through his salt, through his sheer hatred and his envy, through human emotions, he's able to surpass his limits and break free from the control of the super AI. It's really amazing and I really recommend to watch this lore video from FatBrett. Absolutely fantastic stuff, wonderful. But not only that, the presentation is fantastic, as of course it has to be. The arena is as cool as Air's arena, but in my opinion even cooler. The 2 sea spiders that help in phase 2 add a lot, and I just love how the fading music is used in this fight. First you see the wreckages of Walter's and Carla's mechs. It's just good stuff. Also, the soundtrack is wonderful, it's fantastic and great, and in general Armored Core 6 soundtrack super underrated, super great, and Allmind soundtrack is definitely one of my favorites. Well, everything here sounds really good, like one of the best things ever, right? Did I mention that this boss is mechanically probably also the best fight, at least I ever fought? Yes. Allmind is also stellar in the mechanical department. First we have phase 1. And yeah, it may not seem like a good first impression because it's not really great. On a normal run, I think it's alright. Like, at least the mechs are programmed in a way that makes sense. The gank is not like super oppressive, and honestly, I don't really enjoy this on replays. I just want to get to the good stuff, so I would really appreciate if there was like an optional checkpoint if you just want to practice phase 2 and phase 3, which is the meat of the fight. Phase 2, as I already mentioned, adds 2 sea spiders, which do synchronized moves with the boss together. Yes, this mech, which is by the way Allmind super mech and also the coolest looking machine in the entire game if you ask me, does synchronized attacks with 2 sea spiders, and it works wonderfully. It's my favorite gank of all time, well, either this or Sisters of Battle from Hollow Knight, and in general it's just so fun. Yeah, the mech is very similar to Air in this phase, but it has some extensions and it still works differently. It's really cool. But then, after you beat phase 2 and Iguazu finally manages to break free from Allmind, you get the best phase of all time. Phase 3 of Allmind is absolutely incredible. This phase is the most demanding part of the Armored Core 6 combat, the pinnacle you could say. It forces you to do insanely tight quick boost timings, positioning is as important as ever, constant movement to avoid laser barrages is also needed, it's everything there. And then there is the Allmind 4-hit combo, which has like a million ways to be avoided. It's super tough and super fun, probably the best move in Armored Core 6. In general, everything in phase 3 looks amazingly. These wonderfully moonlight looking attacks, tridents, piercing claws, it's not only cinematic, it's also just probably the most fun shit to avoid in a game I've found so far. Everything about this fight is just perfect. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. I think Allmind is a masterpiece. Not only as a final boss, but as a boss in general. It's just incredible. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like the video and support this channel. It means a lot to me. And also, if you have some other final bosses you feel like I maybe forgot or you prefer, please let me know in the comments. Just now I'm thinking of final bosses I could mention, like the final boss from Lies of P or the final boss from Prince of Persia Lost Crown. Also two fantastic final bosses. There are just so many and picking just 5 is really hard. But these are the 5 I want to give a special spotlight because I think they're fantastic and just some of my favorite bosses of all time. Once again, thank you so much for watching my content and see you in the next video. Bye!